Okay, let's talk about all things Lasso CSS. So what you're looking at right now is a Lasso display. It's a single URL display. It's a six box layout. We have three different layouts currently. We have a six box, a three box, and a two box, and I'll explain what that all means. So um, what we want to do here is if you want to change some CSS in your display box, you can do that in your theme. You can override some of the CSS that's on our Lasso displays. We want you to have a good brand color, so we built in that functionality, and we also want you to have a lot of themes to choose from that fit your brand. But let's just say out of all the themes that we have, something's just not right for you, and you want to change it. So I'm going to show you a few quick ways that you can change the CSS in your own style.css theme file. So let's go through it. So this what I'm about to go through is a lot of CSS. So if you're unfamiliar with coding and CSS, HTML, all that stuff, this is probably going to be confusing. And I may move a little fast because I've just been doing this for so long, and I I don't know when to slow down and what base knowledge that you have. So let's just go through it. I recommend you use Chrome for this because Chrome has, that's what I use, and it has this inspect tool here. So if you right click and you go to inspect, it's going to pop up this window. It may be somewhere else for you. For me, I keep it here at the bottom. And so let's inspect what this actually looks like. So we're just going to click this button here, which selects the element, and we're going to hover over this. And if we kind of collapse this right here, you can see, and I'll move it up and make it a little bit bigger. Let's do this. So Lasso container is what contains the entire Lasso display. This is for the grid has this, single displays have this, tables have this. So the container basically just like keeps everything in line. You will never really have to change this. The only thing that you may want to change is if you want some more spacing between the box itself and the paragraph below it. There's a margin set to 30 pixels, and the margins are set where this is like margin, this 0 is margin top, this 0 is margin left and right, and this 30 pixels is bottom. So you can see the orange right there below the box. That means there's 30 pixels below the box, and that's pretty standard. So if you want to change that, you can go ahead and change this to, let's say 50, and you'll see that it grows. But I'm going to keep it at 30 because that's where it belongs. And everything I'm doing here is non-destructive. So you'll have to, anything that you're doing here, you'll have to actually do this in your theme file for it to work. So let's break into Lasso, the container. So Lasso has this new other container, which is the actual display itself. So Lasso display is, something that we have for like Flexbox reasons, and Flexbox is all the boxes that we'll go through in a second. And then Lasso Cactus is the class name of the theme. So whenever you want to change something in a specific theme, you have to choose the theme first, and then you have to choose what you want to manipulate. In this case, it's going to be Lacto Cactus. So you can see, or Lasso Cactus. So you see Lasso Cactus has a border around it. Its border radius is 15 pixels, and its padding is 30. So if you say didn't want a border, you could just remove, you couldn't remove it, but what you could do is in your theme file, you could say Lasso Cactus, so dot Lasso Cactus, and then border none, and then make sure it's set to important. Make sure you have this important thing in there. Okay. So if you do that, it will override this. It'll cross this out, and all of a sudden you won't have a border. And that's as simple as that. So some things can be done here in display. And I wouldn't touch anything here in Lasso display because that kind of sets the stage for the Flexbox, which is the next thing we're going to go through. So as you can see, Lasso is broken up into 6 boxes, where this specific theme has 6 boxes. Lasso box 1, 2, 3, which is the button, 4, which is where the other button would go, but since we don't have a button, it's empty. This is where Lasso box 5 is where we usually keep the disclosure, and Lasso box 6 is where we keep the date and other things. So that's how it works. And you can see that these are kind of even, right? These are evenly spaced, but then this one is set to 30 pixels, and this one's set, 30%, and this one's set to 70%. So that's what Flexbox allows us to do, is it allows us to change the size of the divs, but then keep it all kind of looking like a grid. right? So let's go into Flexbox 1. So Flexbox 1, you can see that we use 70% flex, which is what we want. And in Flexbox 2, we use a 30% flex because you want the flex to be 100%, or else you're going to have some weird things like this button may appear over here because, everything needs to be at a perfect 100% width, or else things are going to move next to each other that you don't want. So just make sure that you're consistent with your boxes. Now, if you wanted to, as an example, let's say you wanted this to be the whole top piece. Well, then you would just set this to 100%. And what it's going to do is it's going to push the image. You got to set these both to 100%, by the way. And that's going to push the image to the bottom. And you can see now the flex box is 100%. But now we have this problem where this is kind of, not 100%. This is still set at 30. So if we were to set this at, 100%. And again, you can't just change these in your file. You're going to have to override these. So you're going to have to, add this class to your CSS file and then make sure that you add flex and then you change your things and you add the word important. And then you're going to have to add max width, change it to 100% and add the word important. And that will override what we have in Lasso. But obviously we don't want to do that. That's incredibly silly because it doesn't look good. So what I'm just going to do is refresh the screen to go back to where we were. Okay, so let's continue. A lot of what you may want to do, and I've seen this happen before, where you may want this image a little bit bigger. And what we do is we have the containers, which is Lasso box 1. These are flex boxes, but then inside each container, we have another class that represents what goes in there. And so Lasso box has 3 classes. It has Lasso title, it has which is a link, by the way. It has Lasso price, and it has Lasso description. Now, as we add more things, you may see more classes appear here, but these are the 3 that we have in here now. So let's close that up. In Lasso box 2, we have Lasso image, and Lasso image is a link. Now, what we want to do, and I've seen this happen before, Lasso image is flexible. It's gonna grow with whatever this box is. So if we want this box to be 50%, right, we can do that. So let's set this to 50%. Now it's going to shift the box over, so we have to go to Lasso box 1 and also set this to 50%. But you can already see from my screen that the image got bigger because it's stretching with the actual, well, it got bigger, but we maxed this out at 250 height, right? So if you want it to, you'd have to go in here and remove that, and that would make it big. So we maxed out at 250 height for this specific theme. And we can override that in other themes, which we do, but that's kind of our default. We default to 250 height, but keep the max width at 100%. So no matter what you do, it always looks good. The aspect ratio always stays the same. So let's go back and answer like a pretty common thing that I see a lot, and we'll hit refresh and put it back to normal. So a common question that I get is, I want to change the button. And what we've done in Lasso is we've changed the button color you can change and the button text you can change. But, maybe our theme, you like this theme, but you don't like the fact that it's got this hover effect, which fine. But let's figure out how to change it. So obviously Lasso box 3, we have to go in there. And you can see we have Lasso button 1. And then if we go into this next box, which it doesn't exist, it would have another link in there if it did exist, and it would say Lasso button 2. And by the way, all of these classes are in our help doc. So if you have any questions or you're like, what is this? If obviously you can come in here and say like, okay, Lasso, it's usually what it is previous by Lasso. So Lasso dash disclosure, and then over here where we usually put the date, it's Lasso dash date. So everything has the word Lasso in front of it. Okay, so let's go to Lasso box 3, where this belongs. We don't actually have to call or reference Lasso box 3. This is just the box that it belongs in. We want to reference Lasso box 1, and since this is already a link, there's a few things we can do here. So in this case, we're going to want to add some CSS to this class to change and override what we're seeing right here. So what we're seeing is a hover. And the hover, I mean, I actually don't know how to do this, but you don't really see that hover class in here. So you're gonna have to make guesses. If you know of a way to do that, oh, actually, I think it's right here. Ah, so great. So there's the hover class. Okay, so you click that. I can't believe I just I just found that out. Wow. Okay, cool. You learned something new. So what we're gonna do is you can actually copy just this part. So we don't have a button two, but if you had a button two, you would copy all of this, right? And so I'm just gonna copy all of that. And let's go ahead and just open up, let's do it this way. Let's go into our CSS here in our file. And let's just pick one of them. I think, let's see which one has hours in it. This one. Okay, this is us right here. So I'm going to edit this as HTML. And again, all non-destructive. So what I'm going to do is just move this down so that we have some space to work here. Okay. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this in the header of your website because you're not going to actually see this in your code. I would do this in your style.php or your style.css. And you have to have that with any WordPress theme, the style.css theme. So what we're going to do is paste what we just had, right? So here's what we're doing. We're referencing Lasso Cactus, right? So this is the class name. And the way we know it's a class name is because there's a period in front of it. So that is Lasso Cactus. That's all we really need to reference because that's going to be the name of the actual theme. The second thing we're going to reference, so we're going to create a space, and then we're going to reference inside Lasso Cactus. I want to find lasso-button-1. Okay. And if I do that, and I'm just going to remove this for the sake of ease. Okay. Now we are in the class. If we add these two brackets, we have set up a class and we are targeting this buy now button right here. So we know that it has a transform on it and we know that it has a box shadow on it. So we can say box shadow none. And we also want to add the word important. There it is. Okay. So now we've done that. The other thing we can do is we can remove translate, or the translate, which is the transform. So we go transform and we click none. Now, I happen to know all of these off the top of my head. In fact, I could have this wrong. It's possible that box shadow none and transform none won't work. I'm pretty sure that they will. You'll have to look this up to see how to override things like that. Box shadow, I could also probably do 0 and that would work too. But you want to make sure important is added because that's going to force the override of our CSS. Okay. So we have this all set up. And what I can do is if I also wanted my other button to have the same effect, I could do two things. I could double it and now create another class where I reference button number 2. Okay. And that's one way to do it, but you're duplicating this code and that's not very clean, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the class name, the full class name, including Lasso Cactus, because when you put these together without a comma, they're referencing each other. They're grouped together. So we're going to copy that. We're going to remove all this line. And since I already wrote this code in here, I already have these attributes. I'm just going to go here, hit comma, and then create this. So what this is going to do is it's going to remove the box shadow, and it's going to remove the transform, meaning the hover down effect, on both Lasso button 1 and Lasso button 2 on the hover state. Okay. If you didn't have hover here, you would just have no box shadow. The hover state would still work. And in fact, it may not work because it may be referencing the entire class and it would affect focus. It would affect hover. It would affect everything. Again, not 100% sure. I'd have to test that out, but that's basically it. So here we have it done. Basically save it. And now when we go to hover over the button, nothing's happening because we took away the box shadow and we took away the transform on hover. And if you added this code to your CSS, it would be there forever. Now, there is one problem though. If you decide in Lasso to change your theme, if you're like, I want to switch over to Cutter theme, or I want to switch over to any of our other themes, and we have more on the way, well, this code is going to become obsolete because this code is referencing Lasso Cactus, and we no longer print the Lasso Cactus um, class in those theme names. So you'd have to go into your CSS and change it to the new theme that you're referencing. So whether it be Lasso Cutter, Lasso Splash, whatever it is, whatever the theme name is, you'd have to change it there. But then again, the other theme name may not have any hover effect on the button, and so you wouldn't even have to do this anyway. But that's pretty much how to do everything. And again, you want to add this line of code to your CSS or your style.css file, not within your header, because I mean, you want to be clean about it. And you can do this. And I recommend if you Google CSS and you want to learn CSS, CSS tricks or css-tricks.com is really good. That's where I get a lot of my information from. And if you just have any questions, like you can also reference our post here. And this is going to change over time, but what I've done here, if you go to how to design your own custom lasso displays with CSS, I've actually included the names of every single class that I use to create these boxes. So here's all your Flexbox grids. And by the way, Flexbox, if you're familiar, it's Bootstrap uses this. So if you go to getbootstrap.com, you can learn more about the grid layout, which is exactly what we use. And then themes, these are all the theme names that we have, and more are on the way. And then these are all our content pieces. So like title, price, description, button 1, button 2, those things. I even added the hover classes in there because it's a pretty common one that we see. And then we have 3 different layouts. We have a 6-box layout, which has 6 different boxes. So it's literally all of these are going to be in the theme. Then we have 3-box layout, which is just 3 boxes, all set to 100% width. And then we have a 2-box layout set to 50% widths. And that's pretty much it. And that's how we do everything in Lasso to design them. And I highly suggest that you go in here, do this yourself, troubleshoot it. Chances are, if you're having issues with the theme, it's probably because something's being overridden in your theme. So just check all of your CSS classes to make sure that you're not overriding anything and be more specific with your class naming. Or you can just really try to force, your class attributes by adding this important attribute. I think like pretty much adding this attribute within the actual CSS is going to solve, I'd say like 90% of your problems because a lot of things are being overridden. And you may have a theme that, there's themes out there that don't have certain wrappers, that don't have certain containers, that, try to add weird attributes to images and things like that. Like you're just going to have to override that in CSS or talk to your developer, whoever designed your CSS or your theme, and override it there. That's the only way to do it. But I hope this is somewhat helpful and kind of an inside look at how we design display boxes for Lasso. And these are all going to be kind of based on the same grid layout going forward. And if anything changes, everything will be updated in our help docs, and we'll send out an email to make sure that we're staying on top of things because we don't want anything on your site to break. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. But I encourage you to learn some CSS, have some fun with it, or just use our themes and hopefully they work out for you.